How does the same player call a tournament series a glorified Korn Ferry event 1 week and then call the plan behind it a positive step for professional golf the next? That is the question hanging over Rory McIlroy right now, and the answer runs through boardrooms, billion-dollar investors, and a 122-year-old national championship fighting for its life. Everything in this story is on the record. The criticism came at his United States Open press conference. The reversal came in an official statement released through the PGA Tour itself. And in between those two moments sat a single private conversation with the most powerful executive in professional golf. To understand why fans are now throwing around a word as heavy as hypocrite, you have to understand the entire chain of events, because this is not a story about one quote. It is a story about who controls the future of golf and what happens when the sport's most outspoken star finds himself standing on both sides of the line. The story begins with a man who did not come from golf at all. In June 2025, the PGA Tour hired Brian Rolapp as its first ever chief executive officer. Rolapp arrived after 22 years at the National Football League, an organization that operates as one of the most powerful entertainment machines on the planet. The National Football League controls its schedule, its media rights, and its narrative from a single point of command. Professional golf works nothing like that, and Rolapp knew it. But he was not hired to maintain the existing structure. He was hired to rebuild it. His mandate became clear almost immediately when he stood at East Lake Golf Club in August 2025 and declared, "The goal is not incremental change, the goal is significant change." He laid out 3 governing principles for what would come next: parity, scarcity, and simplicity. And by the end of that same year, the tour's boards had approved him to succeed Jay Monahan as commissioner beginning in January 2027, ending Monahan's 10-year tenure and consolidating an extraordinary amount of authority in one office. The context surrounding Rolapp's arrival explains the urgency. Professional golf had just LIV'd through what many fans described as a civil war. The LIV Golf League launched in 2022 with enormous funding from the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, and it pulled some of the sport's biggest names away from the PGA Tour with massive payouts. But by 2026, the picture had shifted dramatically. The Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund announced it would no longer fund LIV Golf beyond the current season, forcing LIV Golf Chief Executive Officer Scott O'Neill to seek fresh capital, reportedly in the range of $250 million to $350 million, with the boutique investment bank Ducera Partners retained to help. Meanwhile, the PGA Tour had taken on a $1.5 billion minority investment from the Strategic Sports Group, a consortium led by Fenway Sports Group principal John Henry, with the potential for that figure to double. Those investors expected returns, and Rolapp understood the battlefield better than anyone. As he explained, the United States sports media market is worth roughly $30 billion, and the National Football League alone takes $12 billion of it, with public intentions to double that number. Every other sports property, golf included, was fighting for what remained. In Rolapp's own words, if you're in the sports business, it behooves you to put your house in order. Putting the house in order started with the committee. In August 2025, the PGA Tour established the Future Competition Committee, a 9-member body tasked with designing the optimal competitive model for the tour's future. Its chairman was Tiger Woods, the winner of 15 major championships and arguably the most influential golfer in history. Alongside him sat 5 fellow player representatives: Patrick Cantlay, Adam Scott, Camilo Villegas, Maverick McNeely, and Keith Mitchell. McNeely and Mitchell had been elected co-chairman of the Player Advisory Council in April 2025, with McNeely earning a 4-year board term and Mitchell a 3-year term. Rounding out the committee were 3 business advisors: Joe Gorder, the former chief executive officer of Valero Energy and chairman of the PGA Tour boards, John Henry of Fenway Sports Group, and Theo Epstein, the former Boston Red Sox general manager and Chicago Cubs baseball operations president. The committee was given what Rolapp called a clean sheet mentality, guided by parity, scarcity, and simplicity. But the process was not smooth, and this is where the drama begins to build. Golf Digest reported that at least 3 individuals connected to the process, a player director, a former player, and one tour executive, had become consistent friction points, asserting they were protecting playing opportunities for the rank-and-file membership. Some inside tour headquarters openly questioned whether that resistance was principled or personal. Rolapp himself acknowledged the difficulty with a carefully chosen phrase describing tension in the process, which means we're making progress. To those inside the building, that phrase landed as an admission that not everyone in the room was pulling in the same direction. The committee chaired by Tiger Woods was building something enormous, and not everyone liked the blueprint. The public got its first real look at that blueprint in March 2026, during the week of the Players' Championship at TPC Sawgrass. Rolapp held a major press conference, not at the tournament venue, but at PGA Tour headquarters in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, in front of more than 1,000 sponsors, staff, and media members. There, he unveiled the Vision, a 2-tier tour with promotion and relegation between levels modeled in part on English football, where clubs move between the Premier League and the Championship based on performance. He explained that playing well would earn players the opportunity to compete in the biggest events for the most money. He suggested the number of top-level $20 million signature events could double from the existing 8, and crucially, that those events would move away from small fields with no cuts. The target was fields of roughly 120 players with a 36-hole cut. He also floated the possible integration of match play into the postseason, bringing win-or-go-home drama to the end of the season. The reaction was immediately mixed. Fans and media identified troubling signals. Rolapp spoke of opening the season with a marquee event at an iconic venue in the West, finishing in primetime on the East Coast, language widely interpreted to mean the end of the tour's traditional season opening stops in Hawaii at Kapalua and Wailea. He also noted that the tour competed in only 4 of America's 10 largest media markets, expressing a desire to add cities like New York, Chicago, Washington, Philadelphia, and Boston. That raised alarm for beloved smaller market events. The Travelers Championship outside Hartford, Connecticut stands as the second highest attended non-major on the schedule, behind only the WM Phoenix Open, drawing 400,000 spectators as far back as 2002. Events like the RBC Heritage at Harbortown and Hilton Head suddenly looked vulnerable. Rolapp dismissed the fear of abandoning smaller markets as a misconception, but the math told its own story. If the schedule would be optimized to between 21 and 26 top events and new big markets were coming in, something had to give. Then came June, and the moment that made this entire controversy possible. During his press conference ahead of the 2026 United States Open at Shinnecock Hills, Rory McIlroy was asked about the proposed 2-track system. He did not give a diplomatic answer. He pointed directly at the RBC Canadian Open, an event he has won twice, a tournament that is the 3rd oldest in men's professional golf and part of the schedule since 1904. McIlroy said the Canadian Open was potentially heading to one of these Track 2 events, and then delivered the line that echoed across the sword. Track 2 is a glorified Korn Ferry event. He added that he did not think the Canadian Open should be one of those. For those unfamiliar, the Korn Ferry Tour is the developmental circuit where purses sit around $1 million, a proving ground for players grinding to earn their PGA Tour cards, not a stage for major champions. Comparing the tour's new 2nd tier to that circuit was a direct shot at the credibility of the entire plan. He also warned that certain events might lose their stature if a sponsor did not pony up $30 million. The comment carried extra weight because of who said it and how he had been behaving. McIlroy, the world number 2 and the reigning Masters champion, had been signaling independence for months. He skipped the Cadillac Championship. He skipped the Travelers Championship, his 3rd missed signature event of the year. And back in the fall of 2025, during an interview in Europe, he had made his personal philosophy plain. I want to play golf when I want to play golf. Golf journalist Ian Carter and others covering the sport understood the pattern. This was the tour's most visible star, drawing lines around his own autonomy, while the tour tried to build a system requiring buy-in from everyone. Former Ryder Cup player Stephen Gallagher voiced the skepticism many felt, saying of the idea of mandating schedules for stars, "I don't think that could work, to be honest." He pointed out that top players compete roughly 20 times per year and choose selectively, and that rigid requirements would prevent McIlroy from supporting the Irish Open or stop Scottie Scheffler from playing his hometown Dallas events. Exactly 1 week after McIlroy's Korn Ferry comment on June 23, 2026, everything became official. Ahead of the Travelers Championship at TPC River Highlands in Cromwell, Connecticut, Brian Rolapp announced that the Tour's boards had approved the Future Competition Committee's recommendation. Beginning in 2028, the PGA Tour would split into 2 series. The Elite PGA Tour Championship Series would run from February to August with 23 to 24 events, minimum purses of $20 million, fields averaging 120 players, 36 hole cuts, and no sponsor exemptions. It would include the 4 majors, the Players' Championship, season-ending events, and team competitions like the Ryder Cup and President's Cup. The PGA Tour Challenger Series would run concurrently with a minimum of 20 events, purses of at least $4 million, and fields filled to 144 players. The promotion and relegation mechanics were concrete, but wasn't a minimum of 90 players would retain Championship Series status each season, 20 players would be promoted from the Challenger Series, and 2-time winners on the Challenger Series would earn immediate promotion. A last chance series of 4 to 6 fall events would offer limited additional pathways. Match play would return in a reimagined postseason with a rotation of prestigious venues replacing the annual trip to East Lake in Atlanta, and reports indicated the tour was exploring courses like Pine Valley, Cypress Point, and Seminole Golf Club. The announcement carried a stunning subplot. Tiger Woods appeared in public for the first time since his arrest on driving under the influence charges on March 27, 2026, having returned from seeking a treatment out of the country to resume his committee chairmanship. He introduced Rolapp at the press conference and framed the work in unifying terms, saying the effort was never about any one player or person. Rolapp welcomed him back warmly, noting Woods had contributed meaningfully throughout the process. And then Rolapp turned to the McIlroy problem. He confirmed to reporters that he had spoken with Rory McIlroy that very day, and he proceeded to dismantle the Korn Ferry comparison point by point. The tour currently has 47 events serving roughly 230 players, and Rolapp stressed that both numbers would remain the same going forward. The Challenger Series, he argued, would feature venues fans recognize, healthy purses, and a subset of the same players already on tour, which he called much different from what the Korn Ferry Tour is today. For perspective, all but 3 regular non-signature events in 2026 carried prize funds of at least $9 million. Then came the reversal that ignited the hypocrite accusations. That same day, McIlroy released a statement through the PGA Tour calling the announcement a positive step for professional golf. He praised the reaffirmation of meritocracy, expressed support for elevating historic international tournaments and national opens, and said the sport was putting the fans first. The man who had branded the second tier a glorified Korn Ferry event 7 days earlier was now one of the plan's most prominently quoted endorsers, all while skipping the very tournament where the announcement took place. Critics pounced on the contradiction. Analyst Matt Mosley publicly questioned the tour's rebuttal itself, arguing that McIlroy's original criticism was essentially accurate and that the new structure would effectively prevent non-signature events from landing any top players. If Mosley was right, then McIlroy had endorsed the exact outcome he had warned against. To be fair to McIlroy, his position contains more nuance than a simple flip. He continued pressing on the details that mattered most to him, particularly the National Opens. The dilemma is genuinely unsolved. If the RBC Canadian Open becomes a Championship Series event, sponsor Royal Bank of Canada would need to commit nearly $50 million across its 2 title sponsorships, and the tournament would shut out most Canadian players. This year, 21 Canadians teed it up at TPC Toronto at Osprey Valley, but under Championship Series eligibility, only 4, Nick Taylor, Corey Connors, Taylor Pendrith, and Mackenzie Hughes, would have qualified. Taylor captured the stakes plainly, saying, if you can't play in it, that's going to be a big bummer. If the tournament drops to the Challenger Series instead, it loses every one of the top 130 players because Championship Series members will be prohibited from playing Challenger events. The Genesis Scottish Open, currently co-sanctioned with the DP World Tour, faces the same trap, and Scotland's top-ranked player, Robert McIntyre, has argued it should return to being a full DP World Tour event, insisting it must remain scheduled before the Open Championship. McIlroy himself proposed building out an international series of national opens with real meaning behind them and warned that an event cannot call itself a national open if it becomes closed off. Meanwhile, other fault lines remain wide open. FedEx Corporation, the financial backbone of the postseason since 2007, has a deal expiring in 2027 with no announced renewal, though Rolapp said the tour would honor the existing contract and hope to create more value. Roughly 15 Championship Series slots were still unassigned at the announcement, and hometown events supported by Scottie Scheffler and Jordan Spieth in the Dallas Metroplex appeared likely to fall into the Challenger Series. Golf Canada Chief Executive Officer Lawrence Applebaum said his organization was aligned with the PGA Tour, but acknowledged the tour has a lot of work ahead of itself. So is Rory McIlroy actually a hypocrite? The honest answer is that this was never a rebellion, and it was never a surrender either. It is a negotiation happening in public between a chief executive officer racing to modernize a sport for a brutal media marketplace and players trying to protect traditions that took a century to build. McIlroy criticized a proposal, spoke directly with the man behind it, and endorsed the approved version while continuing to fight for the details he cares about. Whether that is hypocrisy or pragmatism depends entirely on what happens to tournaments like the Canadian Open when the new system arrives in 2028. So now the question goes to you. Are you on the side of modernization or the side of tradition? And what should happen to the Canadian Open? Drop your answer in the comments and subscribe so you do not miss what happens next in the fight for golf's future.